Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Alan, how are you, sir?
Good, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, what
I
are you
am.
excited about?
Oh, it's Wednesday.
What's that mean?
Integrate Live workshop, buddy.
That's right. Oh, that's what we're on. All right, well,
Yeah.
good. Now I know what we're doing. Oh, well, hey, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm happy to report that our technical problems are already behind us today. My MacBook completely died 15 minutes ago. So that's over. I'm on the backup laptop and we are good to go. Alan, I could use a laugh. You got anything for me?
Yeah, my dog used to chase people a lot and is got so bad I had to take his bike away.
Okay. That's that's something. That's something else. Let's see if we can do any better with our guides today. Let me introduce our guides. Obviously, we know our technology stack, but if we take a look at see who's going to be joining us from the guide side today, we're going to have Kevin Jones coming to us from Ectobox, and we've got the amazing David Schultz joining us from Matrix Technologies. Let's go ahead and move down a couple slides and we'll take a look at these guys. There they are. Hey, Kevin. Hey, David. Why don't you say hi to everybody? Tell us what we're looking forward to today.
Good morning. Good morning. Don't I get to do a dad joke? I mean,
Yep.
Are you prepared?
All right. Well, I just want to make sure. Our family really enjoys Star Wars, and so in honor of Star Wars Day, May the 4th be with you. The question is, what's the best way to describe the body temperature of a tauntaun?
Oh, man.
Anybody? It's
No.
lukewarm.
Oh, oh.
I like it.
Some people. I like that.
That's great.
That's a good one.
Legit. I like it.
Yeah, well, Kevin, speaking of tools, I have a step ladder, but I never did meet my real ladder.
That's good. That's good. Well, I got to tell you guys, I appreciated Walker's from the 4.0 Solutions yesterday promoting. And so anybody out there from the 4.0 Solutions community, thank you for being here. Now, right after Walker got done promoting us, he made a comment that talked about business development guys not being the smartest guys in the room. I will attest to that. But Walker, if you're listening, I do have the smartest dog in the world, and I can prove it. Yesterday, I asked him, what's 2 minus 2? He said nothing. Well, Kevin, David, who joins us today? What's our tech solution looking like? Who's our guest? And
well, from the Opto 20, the Opto 22 side, we have Benson and Garrick. Benson has been with Opto 22 for a while, driving a lot of the efforts. And quite honestly, I see a lot of stuff, and I think he is the one with the coolest background behind him, always and forever. Second coolest, I think, might be Dave Schultz, with the blinky lights and whatnot. But Benson's really, it really kicks butt there. Yeah. And Garrick, a real PLC guru. Have a lot of respect for him because he worked at the Stone Brewery. A guy who works at a brewery, like, 5 or 6 stars in my 5-star book for me.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah. And so on Sarah's link, we have the inimitable Arlen Nipper joining us today, and he's just a real treat to be with. We get together on Saturdays sometimes, and Arlen was kind enough to join us. So that's pretty cool when you get to participate and spend some time with him. So he'll be joining us from Cirrus Link, and then Avidyne. We have Kyle. Later on, we'll introduce him as SCADA Kyle, but he's with Avidyne, and they created some of the technology that we're going to be utilizing today. So with that, Kevin, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so we're really talking about, next slide, please, Benson, if you could, a really interesting use case here that I think really kind of originated from Alan, and we'll get to that. But the whole idea is, how can I protect my legacy PLCs within the OT network, from OT network to OT network, from potential threats while still maintaining access? There are a number of situations where this can be really valuable, and we'll be going back and forth about some of these ideas, but one of the really interesting ones Dave knows pretty well is in oil and gas. You want to kick into that one, Dave?
Yeah, so within oil and gas, we're going to talk a little bit about a pipeline. So they'll have these meter provers. So that does the custody transfer of all the oil, whether it's crude oil or finished products coming through. The SCADA guys can always operate that equipment, but they cannot access any of the underlying controls for that equipment. So the application we're doing is there a mechanism to allow access to those controls, but doing it through the SCADA network? So that'd be one of those applications. Another one is in large utilities, same type of application where there are hundreds of people that might be accessing that SCADA environment to do all of the controls, but because of cybersecurity reasons, don't want those people actually to be able to get in and access the PLCs that sit on that particular network. And then of course, within manufacturing, if you're in some kind of a very sensitive product that you're making, I always like to talk about baby formula, because there's nothing worse than having a contaminated baby formula batch out there. That's something that's in the news here lately. It's how can I do the same thing of be able to control my system while allowing people to go in and make changes to the PLCs, but control that very tightly and not even give it access. So we are going to be going from an OT environment to another OT environment, but that's the use case we're going to take a look at today.
And some of these use cases are really current for us as well. Even that second one that we've talking about, utilities, or you know, for us, we've worked on together. Dave and our teams have worked on some energy assets. Looking at another project where it's a whole university and they're building campus, and specifically the energy assets within that whole system on the OT networks, and being able to have access to these so that you can actually continue to run the systems, but also protect the brownfield PLCs. Incredibly valuable setups. So one of the things that I think about when I think about various solutions are, well, there are other ways to do this, like E1s, TOSI boxes, VPNs, jump servers, and that kind of thing. And from my perspective, E1s, TOSI boxes, etc., every solution has its place. And Dave, do you want to speak to TOSI box, E1s, and some of these other options, and whether they make sense in this situation? I think they might not. They're really valuable in a lot of places, but in this one, this solution seems to work out a little bit better. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so within the appliances, oftentimes you're going to need to have external access to operate those. There's a server that maintains that access control, and we're sitting down at that layer where we really do not want to have any type of access. VPNs or VLANs, much the same way. We found with just doing a software solution that security could still be bypassed. That VLAN, that connection is always available. And the risk is that if you spend enough time on it, you're eventually going to figure out how to crack over and get over into another VLAN. Same thing with like say a jump server type of thing. Getting access to those, to a different network through that, there's still risks that you pose here. So that's why this is a better way to go.
And does it get into where OT should have control over their assets? They can work with IT as a team, but IT shouldn't be, demanding and requiring a lot of the parameters for how the solution should work. I mean, is that really part of this as well? That we don't want to exclude IT, we want to work with IT, but really OT needs to be driving their own capabilities?
Yeah, so this really comes down to the fact of we need to have, whenever you try to gain access through IT, there have been issues of sometimes it can take 2 weeks before I'm going to have that access made available. And if I have an issue where I need to get in and make some changes right away, how can I do that?
Yeah.
So really, this is just, I think the power of this, and if you can, and when you're following along, just understand this is a very specific use case, OT to OT, but understanding the power of what it does, it translates into so many other remote access or just very robust security measures that we'll get into. But really the power of this particular one is that it's an IT solution, but it's being rolled out in an OT environment. So OT people can support it.
Yeah, it's getting the OT capabilities and tools in play to create that IT solution. So one of the things that Dave and I will be doing through this whole conversation is kind of jumping in and out to help clarify, pull out some points, ask maybe the dumb questions. I'm really good at that part. So we'll make sure that we can cut to the core of the value of the solution, because we'll talk about a lot of stuff. One of the next things we'll talk about is Alan talking about where did this whole thing start? There's a story I think you have, Alan, about how this started.
Yeah, interesting. So the last company I worked with, we were audited by our parent companies every 3 years, and we were continually being asked to get rid of the vulnerabilities in the OT space. Well, how do you do that? How do you take a PLC 5 that's not protected, has no way to protect that code, and without replacing it? How would you go about if you had thousands and thousands of PLCs in your OT network? Because remember, this is 5 different counties, 30 miles long. Is one asset is 30 miles by 5 miles with thousands and thousands of different components and devices and processes in it, and with hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who have access into that OT space. And so if you have a cogen or a piece of equipment that can be very impactful to the environment, safety of others, whatever it is, you want to protect that at a different level and restrict that access to that. So we were faced with, how do we as a company, how do we meet the requirements of the audit of our parent companies or the companies who we're subsidiary of, and yet not have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in ripping this equipment out that we're not ready to do yet. And so I saw Benson. He did a demo with the Epic, and he had the Siemens PLC and an Allen Bradley PLC, and he showed how the Epic sat in front of it. After that demo, I went to him and I said, that was awesome, but how does my technician, who's 1,000 miles away maybe, get access to that legacy equipment if I segment it using the Epic? Well, there's really not a way, because there was no way to get access to that once you kind of lock it down. And so we started the conversation around, okay, let's talk about zoning and conduiting. We can zone that. That's pretty simple. Your hardware out of the box allows me to zone off those 2 Ethernet ports. Okay, how do we get access to that? And how do we do it using hardened OT equipment within an OT environment that has no internet access? Remember, this is an OT environment that does not have access to anything outside of itself. It's its own domain, already segmented from the IT network, and the IT personnel really stay at the top level, the switch level, and do not come down into the PLC cabinet. So how do we put a device in a PLC cabinet that does not have the IT network and then be able to still give access to that legacy equipment? And in effect, what we were doing was we were taking our cybersecurity and moving it all the way into the PLC cabinet. So you're now at a physical protection instead of a network protection. Now you just got to make sure that the panel's logged. So what we did was, we working with Benson, we came up with the idea of this port forwarding, or the redirecting of the ability to bridge those 2 segmented IP networks within the Epic for a period of time. And so that's really the use case. But what was, I think, and Arlen has been a part of this too. So myself and Benson and Arlen have been meeting for years and talking about this different opportunities that we could really be pushing. And what came about was, we realized when we got this done, that you can now take this Epic PLC, put it anywhere in the world, have that high level of cybersecurity protection, that layered protection, and you can hang it off of an LTE radio, and all your incoming ports are shut down. You're protected. It's encrypted. It has certificate base. It's got LDAP, and so now you can take this one device, put it anywhere in the world, and get access to it. But then there was something else that came out of this. Okay, now I have the Epic PLC in the PLC panel protecting the legacy equipment. Well, guess what the Epic PLC has? It has an HDMI and a USB port. Okay, they also have Groove Epic or Groove View, which can run my touch panel. Well, now I can, for the price of a touch panel, have local HMI. So really the byproduct of trying to solve this one use case opened up an opportunity for a bunch of other things that we were able to really take advantage of.
So to me, it sounds like the Groove Epic is in the middle between the two OT environments, and that
Yes.
is the bridge for the security, and as well the idea of extending the, and you're not even using it as a PLC at that point.
No, we're not. We can extend it out if we wanted to start to do a migration slowly.
Right.
But really, and the magic of it is the rule set that you need to bridge those two networks does not exist in the Epic PLC. It actually, and we'll get to this later, I know I'm kind of opening the hood a little bit, but it actually will come from Ignition, get written down into the Epic PLC. And when the time for that rule times out, it deprecates the entire rule set completely out of the PLC. So it doesn't even exist there. And so again, it's a matter of, if I could get to that PLC, I would have to know a whole bunch of information to build that rule set out, and be very complicated to do if you didn't have that information handy.
Interesting. All right, well, let's get into some more details. Let's have some fun with this. So Benson, next slide, please. So for the technology players involved, the pieces of the puzzle or the tools that you'll need in your toolbox, the first is the Opto 22, which as we think of it is it's a hardened PLC, but it goes a heck of a lot further than that, some of which Alan's already been talking about. One of the things that I really like about it, because I come from IT software background originally, is that it has Linux running on it. The power of a PLC is extended, well, I want to say exponentially. I don't know if that's literal or not, but significantly by having an operating system on that, and then being able to develop all kinds of other tools on top of that operating system within that PLC and more, if you will. One of the other tools that's really important here is inductive automation. I often think and refer to it as an industrial development platform, widely adopted, very widely used, and a great company as well. Dave, how about the other two?
Yeah, so we're going to take advantage of a couple of modules that are available on Ignition Edge. The first is the Cirrus Link, and they have a whole suite of their MQTT modules. Well, one of them is the distributor, which acts as a broker. We'll also be using the MQTT engine to consume that namespace from that broker. There'll also be the transmission as well, which is how we're going to publish out some of the information that is coming from that Ignition Edge instance. And a yet to be released module that was developed by Avidyne. They are an inductive automation partner. They've created a new module that we're calling the Opto 22 API module, and that's going to enable the ability between Ignition Edge and the Opto APIs, so we can make this make the whole path complete. So we can turn things on and off right on the Epic through the Ignition Edge instance.
So with that, then we have Avidyne as well, some basic information about the company and the solutions. At this point, I think, is this Kyle, do you want to say a couple words about this?
Sure. I'll jump in and do a dad joke myself. We have what do you call a pencil with two erasers?
What do you call a pencil with two erasers? I don't know.
Pointless. Sorry, I'm new to being a dad, so I'm getting into the swing of things there. But anyway, as a company, kind of as it says here, we service quite a few industries, main ones being oil and gas, water management. We've kind of gotten into some manufacturing, agricultural, retail, and energy. But as is kind of evident through this, we've developed some software to integrate with Ignition, being the Ignition module, to utilize the API. And we'll get in a little more heavily into that here in a little bit, but to allow for that redirect functionality. but yeah, that's kind of who we are in a small nutshell, and we're very excited to be part of this.
Great, thank you. Benson, I think this is where you start to take over some of the conversation. But if you could, you happen to have a dad joke?
Oh, it's not much of a joke, but it's a bit of a story. In preparation for this webinar, I got a little crazy last night, so I got home late, and unfortunately, I tripped in my driveway. The good news is it was my own asphalt, so I think I'm going to be okay. But with that, we'll jump right in. And indeed, my name is Benson. I'm from Opto 22. Very quickly, we've been around a long time, over nearly 5 decades. One of the things that kind of does make us unique is exactly what Kevin described. This notion of taking rugged, reliable OT hardware and blending it with some IT functionality. So whether that's protocols, networking, accessibility, the use of open standards, and so on. That's kind of what sets us apart from your traditional PLC. The other thing that's kind of unique about us is we're 100% made in the USA. I'm in our headquarters here in Temecula, California, and there's a picture of our building. I'm right underneath that kind of sunroof thing that's right outside my window here. So I'm in my studio, which is just a cube that I converted as part of my COVID project. But right through the windows, I can see our manufacturing facility. So we have a 160,000 square foot facility where we make everything we're about to show you, which also puts us in the unique position, and somewhat enviable, I would say, at this moment in time, that we're still shipping. We make everything here. So we're a very vertically integrated company, from design to manufacture, sales, support, the whole 9 yards happens right here. So we're pretty excited about that. We will be talking about the Groov Epic. And in general, the Groov Epic is an acronym for Edge Programmable Industrial Controller. It's more than a PLC, more than an HMI, more than a lot of things that you see here. And indeed, it's a controller, IO system, HMI, software tools, all kinds of stuff that are way beyond the solving of the problem that we're faced with today. So what I'm going to do is really focus just on the processor. We're not going to talk about IO control or anything like that. And I've got this little Epic right here next to me. You can see in the video feed. I'll be demonstrating that coming up in a moment. But what I want to focus on is, what are some of the features of the Epic that are specific to solving this problem? And indeed, it starts with the CPU. It is a quad-core CPU with lots of RAM on there. It is a Linux-based OS, as Kevin described, with a power fail-safe SSD. So this is designed to be in an industrial environment. Indeed, it has dual gigabit Ethernet interfaces. We'll be using those to solve this problem today. And it's mounted on a stainless steel chassis. It's got wide temperature range, all the regulatory approvals to live in just about any environment, including Class 1 Div 2 environments. But the other kind of cool thing is it's all web-based. It's all managed through your browser. So that's kind of cool. And then we have a fair amount of pre-installed software in there, way more than we're going to cover in this particular application. But we will be talking about ignition, and we will be talking about MQTT. There's also, as noted by Alan earlier, a built-in HMI with an HDMI port, so we can just go out to a touch screen. I won't be demonstrating that there, but since Alan mentioned it, I made sure it was in the slide. All right, let's get started. The way I want to try to approach this is try to give you a visual architecture of how these pieces are coming together. So indeed, here we have our SCADA network. This is an OT network where we have lots of different devices on there. It could be PLCs, it could be workstations, it could be the SCADA server as well. And generally, this is in a pretty large network space. And the problem is, not a huge problem, but in case of, say, some given particular device, whether it's PLC or whatever, that is critical, and as Alan described, we need to protect that off of this network from other devices on the network. How can we do that? How can we get started with, while this is a trusted network because it's OT, by the sheer size of the devices and so on, and potentially workstations on there, it becomes untrusted. We're not sure of everybody on that network. So we're going to call it an OT network, but to some degree untrusted. So how do we start moving some of these critical devices out of this network while still providing accessibility. So we'll start by placing a secure EPIC PLC on there. And I'll stop using PLC because we're not even going to use the PLC. We'll just call it the EPIC, the Edge Programmable Industrial Controller. We'll put it on the same SCADA network. But what's different about the EPIC as compared to some of the other PLCs is it's secure out of the box. So there's already a firewall on it. There's already accounts on it. All that, everything that's required to make that device secure within this environment is built in. So the only port open on that thing, is particularly on Ethernet 1, which is the Ethernet port I'll connect it to, is only HTTP access. So that means you must have a secure connection and provide a user pass just to get into the device. So once I do that, then I'm going to effectively move the critical PLC, in this case, this little AB PLC, into its own network zone. So this is like a private OT LAN that's separate from the main SCADA OT LAN. So any other idea behind this is that I can start small. I can pick say one PLC or one device and segment it off, just as you see here. This isn't about boiling the ocean or eating the elephant or trying to change everything at once. We can be very piecemeal and very methodical in our approach. So it should be noted, I'm not physically moving the PLC. I'm simply putting an EPIC in front of the PLC on the same network and then creating a small little protected private OT network. So the next thing I'll do is I'll configure the IP addresses. I'll be doing all this live, and this is just a demonstration of how I'm going to go through those steps. So I'll configure the network address spaces, showing that those indeed are two different networks. And then we're going to invoke what we call, which is already in play, the zero trust model. So I'm not trusting anything or anyone or any port out of the box. Everything I do is to configure any kind of communications between the main SCADA network and the private network, and be able to do this on demand and by a single port. We're not doing anything where we're exposing the green LAN to the OT LAN. We don't want to do that. We want to be very specific and very granular on how we do that. So, and we want to be able to do it on demand. And further down the line, we want to be able to invoke those kinds of commands from SCADA. So we'll get to that too.
But Benson, this
yeah,
is
go ahead.
For the interruption, just to kind of clarify.
No, please.
So this is where the EPIC then it becomes the bridge between the two networks. This is really the bridge point, right?
Yeah, the first thing is, to your point, is get them separated with a zero trust model. Now they're completely separate. There's no chance for one to get to the other. And when Alan and I first talked about this 3 years ago, that was good, but he still needed access. So that's where we're going to go next.
Great, awesome.
Yep. Now, once I get this, I'm actually going to use the software, the groov managed software that's for managing the EPIC, and I'll actually create one of these conduits temporarily and make sure that Garrick can get to that PLC, because Garrick is on the OT network at the technician workstation. So then I'll shut it back down, because we don't want to do it that way. What we really want to do is manage all this from SCADA and all on an outbound basis. So we're going to fire up Ignition Edge that's already pre-installed and running on the EPIC, and I'll configure two things. One, naturally, I got to get the data out of the PLC, right, back into the SCADA network. So I'm going to use MQTT, MQTT transmission, and the Allen Bradley, in this case, Allen Bradley driver that's part of Ignition, and I'll be able to scan all the PLC tags, put them into a nice MQTT message, and send it on up. But I'm also going to use the Opto 22 Avidyne module to take all of those port redirects and all of that cybersecurity information and put it in the same MQTT payload and get it up to the SCADA. So we're going to show you how to do that. And then once we do that, we're starting to move the data into MQTT broker. Now, in this case, the MQTT broker is on the OT LAN. Okay, it can be anywhere. It can be on the cloud. It can be on-prem. It can be wherever you like. It's just software. And to talk a little bit about that software, we're honored to have the co-inventor of MQTT himself, Arlen Nipper, here to talk a little bit about what MQTT is and why he developed it.
Thanks, Benson. So last time I explained, just a little technical background. I explained what RS 232 was, and now we'll go into what is RS 485, and that means that you've got a serial network that it takes 4 engineers 8 days to make it work. So with that, and that segues to the root cause of our problem here. So, you know, in the 1980s, we started doing SCADA, and we had cool things. We had DB9s on our laptops. We had serial communications. Now, you know, the thing about serial communications is kind of like if you're in class, you have to raise your hand before the teacher can tell you to talk. Well, we've got the same problem, is that we've got 4 or 5 decades of devices that won't tell you anything unless you ask them. And you have to know what to ask for, and you have to know how to ask for it. Now, let's put this in context. When we were working with Phillips 66 and they got their brand new TCP/IP VSAT system, what did they have? They had a central computer making 1,000 outbound connections to all of the booster stations, to the tank farm systems, to their EFM devices. Those will all have to have ports open out in the field. Now, this thing called TCP/IP came along, and TCP/IP was really cool in that you don't have to have permission to talk. Once you're on an IP network, you can send data, you can get data back, but you don't have to be coordinated with some master computer. So when Andy and I were thinking about this, and at the time, IBM were doing service-oriented architectures, which were publish and subscribe. So they didn't want IT people writing an application that was hard-coded to another application, right? Because if you change one end, you have to change the other, and maybe 100 other applications. So IBM came up with message queuing. I thought was pretty cool. What if you published a piece of information, not caring who consumed it, and then anybody that's interested in that information could subscribe to it? So that's exactly what MQTT is. MQTT is an implementation of message-oriented middleware that simply lets you publish a piece of information, not caring if one application or 1,000 applications are going to consume it. Now, let's change that picture now. Now we've got Phillips 66. They've got 1,000 remote sites, but guess what? Everybody's connecting to one port on a broker with access control lists on it. So we've just taken the security footprint from 1,000 ports we've got to connect down to a single port. Now, the other important thing is that, and you know, actually, I think back, and I really don't know why we did. I think it was probably because it was easier. Andy and I decided to make it a remote originated connection. So that means that I don't even need to know. So again, let's go back. Remember those 1,000 booster stations? Alan or Benson would need to know the IP address of every single box out in the field. Well, now I don't need to know anything. So a remote site comes up, it knows the broker, and it makes a remote originated connection inbound. Now, for the discussion today, the important point is there's no ports open out in the field. But yet, when we've got that MQTT session open using security like TLS, now it's bi-directional. Now we not only can we publish from the remote site into our central site, we can publish commands back out, and that's what's going to give us the ability to control not only the attached equipments, the PLCs and the sensors, but also start doing some pretty cool stuff inside of Ignition with the Avidyne module, because we're literally going to be able to write to the tags in that as well. So with that, Benson, I'll let you continue.
Let me just say before we go on that, and it's almost an injustice to not give you more time to really explain this, but and I can't encourage people more to be able to just go to YouTube, look up Sparkplug B, look up Arlen's name. He talks about decoupling. He talks about unified namespace. He talks about all those topics that we're dealing with in that 4.0 space that are going to be very impactful. The reason you're going to continue to probably see MQTT in our workshops is because it's a protocol that allows us to accomplish solving the problem within a very short period of time.
Let's go ahead and plug ARC forum. First week of June, Orlando, all you end users, it's free. And Arlen, we've got a Sparkplug community meeting happening on that Thursday, right?
Yes, we do. And we also, for anybody that's interested in just technology, we're going to have Sheffield University, the AMRC, Advanced Manufacturing Research Center. They are going to be coming and presenting, and they've got one of the most awesome programs. It's not just a little incubator. I mean, we're talking, they're controlling manufacturing. It's all using MQTT, Sparkplug. It'll be a very interesting, I'm looking forward to it myself.
Is
What
there
are
a
the dates on that?
registration? Is there a registration needed to be a part of that meeting, the Sparkplug B or the Sheffield?
You just have to sign up for ARC, and it's free this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just asking what the dates for that were, Arlen.
June
through
6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Perfect.
Great. So thank you, Arlen. And indeed, that's what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to be able to keep firewalls in place, keep the ports blocked on the Epic device, further protecting the PLC on the backside, and start publishing the data from the PLC into a broker. Now Ignition can automatically discover all the tags being produced by that Allen Bradley device without knowing its IP address, without having to hit it on an open port. So we've really done a good job here of protecting that PLC. Now, the beauty of this is it's scalable. You know, as we identify other critical assets we may have to segment, we clearly do the same thing with maybe multiple PLCs. You know, it's really not a lot of limitations here. There's a lot you can do with different architectures. And again, I think it's important to know that you're doing this piecemeal. Again, you can find out, you know, discover the critical pieces that you need to move into these environments, do those and do them one at a time, or however the application, you know, is whatever the application needs are. Indeed, I still have this little, you know, serial device down here. It's a little Modbus device. Maybe I want to move that off the OT network, and maybe not because I need to protect the serial device, but maybe I do want to put it behind, again, Ignition Edge, do the, you know, serial scanning on the backside, and then publish all its data again back into MQTT architecture. So there's a lot of flexibility here in terms of how we're moving the data around, how we're creating the unified namespace, and how we're keeping all those ports closed to those legacy unsecure devices. Finally, and this is kind of a bonus thing, we're not going to have time to actually cover this today, but what's important is each of these devices that we're using to secure the two OT networks has a lot of other built-in capabilities, including VPN clients. So indeed, I can set those up, have them connect to a VPN server, and permit remote access to those systems and to the PLCs on the backside on an on-demand basis, always you know, configured or enabled through SCADA. And once it's enabled through SCADA, I get auditing, I get historical recording of those events, I get alarming, I get everything that SCADA provides.
But
So
I have a question.
Mhm.
If I VPN into the Epic that's sitting out there in front of a PLC, does that mean I'm going to get access to that PLC?
Only if you further invoke the rule.
Yeah. So again, the
And-
point is that just because you have VPN access, what you're getting access to is the trusted, the untrusted side of that PLC, not the segmented side, until you evoke the rule set that gives you the conduiting to that PLC.
That's correct. And also to clarify, you're not VPNing into the Epic.
Right.
The Epic is not a VPN server. It's a VPN client. So a server exists somewhere else that could be spun up by OT, that could be spun up by IT, whatever. We're just going to connect to that server, providing the tunnel all the way through.
Right. And
Again,
it's important. Yeah. And that's important to note, Benson, that's a reverse VPN. So you're sending a command over MQTT or to make the Epic's going to make the outbound connection to
Correct.
the VPN server.
That's right. And when we do that, we're not natting. So we're not
Right.
exposing anything from that VPN connection because it starts from Epic. But
Yep.
again, I think this would be great for another Integrate Live in the future, all about VPN remote access. The key point here is that it's included. It's just another piece of software you turn on.
I tell you
So
what,
we're gonna, Go ahead.
Vincent, we'll bring you back on as soon as you can let me know that the Rio gives me the opportunity to do the same thing the Epic does.
I only need about 27 more days.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that. So currently the Rio has 2 Ethernet ports, but they're not segmented at this time. They are
They're
switched
switched.
ports.
But we do have Wi-Fi and other networkable
Yeah.
ports. But
And
yeah, good point.
the Rio has VPN. It's got the capability to be able to isolate the VPN from your
Right.
network, but you can't do the 2 wired segmented networks at this time.
Okay, so we're going to do a little role playing. We've already introduced some of our techs. I'm Benson. I'm going to configure the Epic. I'm going to show you that live. And then we'll have Garrick, that'll be the PLC engineer at his technician workstation. Kyle, who will be the SCADA on the SCADA workstation. He'll be integrating with the Ignition SCADA server that's on the device. And David, as a system integrator, would potentially use the VPN access to provide much of the same type of functionality. So with that, it's time to do the demo.
Was there a slide for those roles? I'm just curious in there somewhere.
Yes, it's coming right up.
Oh, okay. I can't wait to see it. I'm not sure why you'd hesitate to show that
I
right
don't know
away.
why you can't wait to see it, Jeff.
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is part of the demo. The role playing is, and the demo is how to protect your assets on Groove Epic.
Okay.
So
Your OT assets. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
There's that slide.
Oh, where's
Hey,
my
Jeff.
sunglasses? Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
I like your sunglasses, living at the
Yeah.
edge, integration services. Garrick, you're a guru. I get it.
Jeff.
I don't understand what's up with.
SCADA, Kyle.
Yes,
SCADA.
Steve. Yes.
SCADA, not
I
SCADA.
thought you said skater Kyle. SCADA Kyle. Okay.
SCADA.
Hey, Benson, as you change your camera setup so that we can get your full studio view,
Mhm.
I'd like to ask our audience 2 points. First and most important, we do need your help. I made a horrible mistake. I started a integrate live LinkedIn group instead of sending all of our traffic to the LinkedIn business page. So many of you, over 150 of you, I think, have joined that group. We actually are going to shut that group down. We need you to please follow us on our LinkedIn business page on LinkedIn. So that link is getting dropped right now inside of the chat. Here's why it matters. Until we have 150 followers, LinkedIn will not allow us to do a live broadcast to that channel. So will you please help us? That's the price of admission today. Click that link, just click follow. And that way, when we post these videos, you have access to them. Second thing, as you have questions, please use the question and answer box at the bottom. We'll get to those at the end. Thank you. Benson, back to you.
Terrific. Hopefully you guys can see my studio and demo layout. Are
Got
we
it.
good?
Yep.
Terrific. All right. You can see I have a browser up and I've got my little Epic here. So while we didn't do a complete out of the box scenario here, and let me just stop this other video up on top so you don't have to see everything twice. While we didn't do a complete out of the box, we came pretty close, but I want to kind of explain some of the things I've already done. So let me switch my screen here so you can see my Epic, and here it is. So it's relatively compact device. This is essentially a Linux computer with a touch screen and so on. And all I did was put it on a stainless steel chassis with a DIN rail clip. I can clip that right next, right in my cabinet next to the PLC I'm going to protect. And the first thing is I've got my red cable here, which is my OT SCADA network. And that's plugged in there to Ethernet 1, which is protected, only allowing secure traffic. The other Ethernet port is right there as well. I'll be getting to that in a moment, as well as the HDMI port, USB ports that Alan described. So there it is, ready to go. Power supply, chassis, and the processor. So now what I'm going to do is I need to log into this thing. Now I could log in through the front screen or to an HDMI panel that's exposed to, that comes off of the HDMI port. But it's going to be a lot easier to do this from a web browser since this PC that I'm presenting from is on the SCADA network. So I'll go ahead and switch my screen around and go to there. And the first thing I need to do is put in the address of the Epic processor. Now, I've already set it up and created an admin account. I'll show you how I did that in a moment. But out of the box, there is a label on the inside that has its default host name, because the Epic is pretty smart. It knows how to reach out to a DHCP server and obtain an IP address and register its name. So I just have to go to its name. So up here in the URL bar, I'll type in the name. I did give it a host name that was easier to remember than the default. And there it is. I'm logging into the Epic. I'm going to log in with my username and password. And when you first power up this thing, there is no default username and password. You must create a default account. And that's an important from that zero trust consideration. We don't want default users, passwords, or any backdoors to get into this system. So I created an account, and here's my account. I can go in here to users, and indeed there's my Opto account, and I can set all my user permissions and so on. Naturally, you can create a lot of other user accounts for various tasks or software that's running on the device. I can even go further, and if there's an LDAP server on my OT network for managing users on the entire network, I can absolutely use that to manage all the users that have access to this device. So a lot of flexibility there in terms of managing access to the Epic controller. The second thing I did is I went in and made sure my server certificate was up to date. I pulled down the public certificate, put it on my PC. That way I always have 100% secure encrypted connection to a server I recognize. That's always important with any kind of security device. We want it to be secure end to end. Finally, I made sure that my firewall settings were set properly. Now, out of the box, the Epic on Ethernet 1 closes all ports except those on secure channels. So indeed, that's the way it's set up right now. Anything that's ETH1 is denied on unsecure software running on the device, and only secure systems can come in through that Ethernet 1 port. So that's pretty much it. There's a whole bunch of other stuff here way outside of the scope of this. So we're going to focus on the task at hand. The first one is, how do we set up that network? How do we set up that private OT network? So I'm going to go here to my network settings, and I'm just going to look at the status right now. And indeed, I said Ethernet 1 is connected on the red cable to my SCADA network. It received an IP address right here from my DHCP server, all automatically. So that's good to go. But now I need to create the separate PLC network in the control cabinet. Now I got a PLC over here over my shoulder that I'm going to connect to for this demo. I'll just show it to you there. I'm going to connect to this PLC right here. So I grabbed a cable and I brought it over my shoulder, and I'm going to plug it in here and create that network. So let's give that a try. So the first thing I want to do is go and configure my second interface. So you can see Ethernet 0 is disabled. So I'm going to come into here and I'm going to give it a static IP address, because on my private OT network with the PLC on it, I don't have DHCP services. I don't have, all of the IT stuff. That's just a private network. So I want to go ahead and put in first the IP address for that Ethernet 0 port. So I'm going to type in 172.22.0.29, because I know my PLC, I know its IP address 172.22.0.50. So I want to be on the same network. So there we go, 255. I'll just put in a default subnet mask and save. Now, while that's going, I'm going to go ahead and grab my cable here that's coming over from the PLC, and I'm going to plug it in.
While you're doing that, Benson, Ben has put into the chat the training videos that you would need to get you from unboxing an Epic all the way to the point where you have it now.
Yes, we have a free training. What I didn't mention about Opto is our training is free. Our support is free. So we have a lot of resources to help you, get through this. Plus, I think we're recording this session, so you can go back and view that too. Terrific. I have a network. I have two networks completely segmented from each other. There's my PLC network, and here's my SCADA network. I've effectively protected that PLC from anywhere else. In fact, I think, Garrick, if you try to open up your RS Link software because you're on the OT network, you probably can't get to that PLC at all. I'll let you test that out while I move on.
Yeah, Benson, I'm pulling it up now, but I was thinking about you said staying up late. I was up late last night, getting in early. I was riding my bike to work, and I thought I was tired, a little sleepy, but my bike, I think it's a little sleepy too, but it may just be too tired. Yeah, you're right. I got links up now. I can't see anything. It is
You should not be able to get to that PLC at all.
Nope, it is unaccessible.
Great. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to set something up for you to allow you to get to that PLC. And in this case, the long game is to have all this done through SCADA and MQTT, and I'm going to get to that. But I want to show just how it's done actually in the Epic, because what the Avidyne module does is do everything I'm doing right now through the API, which allows it to be managed from SCADA. So I'm going to go into network here. And first thing I want to do probably is let's make sure I can get to that PLC. So I have a nice little tool in here, and I told you the PLC was 172.22.0.50. So I'm going to ping it and make sure I can get to the PLC. Okay, good. I can. But I'm not pinging it from my PC. I'm pinging it from the Epic. So just to prove that I'm not, I'm not pulling a fast one here, I'm actually going to open up a command prompt, slide it over into my screen, and bring it back up my thing here. Bring up my command prompt and try to ping the same from my SCADA PC, right? Or that's on the SCADA network. Ping 172.22.0.50. That will not go.
Just so I understand, for non-technical people, what do you mean you're pinging, and what does that mean?
So ping is a way of sending out what's called an ICMP packet over a network to see if a device responds or not. So whether it's on the network. And if I can ping it, that means that I can see it. And then I can start trying to hack it. But in this case, I can't. From the OT network, from my SCADA network, I can't get to that PLC that's on the backside of the Epic. So that was a quick exercise to make sure I can indeed see the PLC. Now I'm going to do what's called the port redirect. And as I can see in zero trust model, there's nothing there yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick rule. I'm going to call this AB program LAN. There we go, and just make sure that's the right settings there. And because I've got some notes here, and that does look like it's correct. So my external port, how does the PLC listen, right? When it's on a network. Right now it's only on the private OT network. Well, the Ethernet IP port is 44.818. This is like the extension on your Office PBX system. In fact, Alan put a nice post on LinkedIn this morning or last night about how that works. But the PLC, even though it has an IP address, still only listens on a port or its extension. In this case, it's 44.18. So I want to listen on Ethernet 1, the SCADA network, and I want to redirect it to the PLC that's behind the Epic. So I'll put in the PLC's address and have it send any packets right to the same port on now the protected private OT network. And I can even put in a source here to limit who can do this from certain IP addresses or IP network address spaces. And that's pretty important too. We're going to leave that blank for now. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to save it.
And what's the significance of that port, Benson?
That is the Ethernet IP port. So that's, and thank you, Rockwell, for naming your protocol Ethernet IP to confuse everybody. But that's essentially the protocol port, how I can go and browse the tags and connect to the PLC.
Okay. So much like when I go to a website, it's port 80 and port 443, that AB Ethernet IP is on port 44.818 or 818, yeah.
Right on the money. Right on the money, David. Perfect. So Garrick, you should be able to connect that PLC now.
Yep, seeing it in links already.
And we'll get to sharing the screen where he's going to show how he's doing that after we get the SCADA portion put in. So we're good. We've created a conduit from one zone to the other to allow access to that PLC. But instead of always doing it through Groove Manage, let's do it from SCADA. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this rule. And as Alan described earlier, that rule is gone. It's disappeared. It does not belong on the device any longer. It's wiped clean. To do it again, I'd have to go through the same creation process. All right, let's move along. Next part is ignition. Ignition's already on here. I did just click the button to enable ignition, accepted the end user license agreement, and created again a user account. So access to ignition is absolutely 100% secure. So there you can see.
And this, you're accessing ignition on the Epic. You're not accessing the server somewhere else.
I'm not going to touch the SCADA server. That's Kyle's job.
Yeah.
I'm just the guy on the edge. That's all I'm going to do is everything on
Living
the edge.
on the edge.
Living on the edge.
On the edge.
So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and log in, or I'm going to go look at the status page, which will force me to log in. So I'm going to click log in. And I've created, like I said, before this event, I created an account. And then I'm on the status page here. I can see the health, but I can also see that indeed I have 2 IP addresses. So Ignition Edge running on the Epic has access to both networks. So that allows me to start facilitating data transfer and so on. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'll just quickly show you the modules that are on here. As you would expect from an Ignition Edge instance, in this case, it's Ignition Edge IoT, as we saw on one of the slides. I've got Allen Bradley drivers, BACnet, DNP, Omeron. They're all in there. They're all ready to roll, whatever device it is you're trying to protect. So in this case, I've also got the Avidyne Opto 22 API module. That's already, I have installed it, but I haven't configured it yet. And then finally, I've got the MQTT transmission module. This is the MQTT client that will collect all the Allen Bradley data, all the port redirect information, package it up into MQTT messages, publish them to the broker for SCADA to consume, or for anybody with the appropriate rights to consume. So that's just a quick look at the modules there. So
and
let's
another
go ahead.
thing about that is that the beauty of that Ignition OPC UA driver is that if a technician conduits into that legacy PLC, adds 10 tags, does some logic, and gets out, closes the conduit, Ignition will pull that PLC, all those new tags will automatically populate into Ignition, and now you can use them in your SCADA. So you don't have to carry a mapping table between the 2 PLCs.
Yeah, and we're also making sure we're always following the rule that Arlen says, single source of truth.
Yep.
When you create a tag in the PLC, you're not creating another tag in SCADA and another tag in a historian and so on and so forth. We're doing everything at the edge. So let's take a quick look at that PLC connection. Again, I pre-configured it, but anybody who's ever used Ignition knows how easy these drivers are to use. I gave it a name and I gave it the IP address of the PLC. So Ignition Edge running on the Epic is now scanning the PLC for all its tags and pulled it into the Ignition Edge system. So now it's part of a tag provider. Pretty straightforward. The second thing I want to show you is the Opto 22 Groov API module developed by Avidyne. And this is it. Now I haven't configured it yet, so we're going to do that now. The first thing I'm going to do is turn it on. So now I've turned on, well, I haven't saved it yet, but I've turned on this module. And then I say, well, what device am I going to manage? Well, in this case, it's localhost. In other words, it's running on itself. So the Avidyne module is communicating essentially to the Groov Manage API, so it can start doing everything it needs to do. But to do that, it has to be authenticated. I have to have an API key. So that's no problem. I go back to my Groov Manage screen, and I'm going to go, this is a one-time setup, go into my accounts, go into my user, and I can add an API user if I want, but I'm just going to, for simplicity, I'm going to grab the API key for the main user. There we go. I'll Control C to copy that, and I'm going to paste it into here and save the changes. I've just spun up the Avidyne Opto 22 module, and it is working. Now, the next setup for that particular module is the network. So it turns out that this module not only handles all the port redirects, it can also handle toggling that VPN client, or the reverse VPN as Arlen described, on and off from SCADA. So I'm not going to use that in this demo, but I will show you the advanced properties. Because one of the problems that we wanted to make sure we covered is if somebody spun up a redirect, so that, like, say, Garrick requested SCADA to fire up that redirect so he could get into the PLC, we don't want to leave it to Garrick to make sure he tears that back down, or SCADA tears it back down, or whatever, so we can actually set up timeouts. So we can time out the VPN, we can time out all the redirects automatically at the edge. So that would have, of course, avoid anybody doing anything, forgetting to turn off a particular port redirect. All right, which takes us right to the port redirect rules. Now this is essentially the same as what I've just done, except now I'm doing it in Ignition, and I'll go ahead and create a new rule. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'll do AB program. Yep, I must have practiced. I've done this before on other devices. And I'm going to say both protocols, same idea, just as David said. I'm going to listen on 44.818 on the OT on the SCADA network, Ether 1, and I'm going to redirect to the PLC, which is 50, and redirect to the same port. And that redirect interface is going to go over to my new private OT network. I can also set up the source. Now, is the rule currently active? It is not. So I'm going to uncheck that box, and I'm going to create the new port redirect rule. Now, the cool thing about the Avidyne module is from within that Ignition Edge environment, I can create a lot of different rules, and now I'm going to be able to invoke them through SCADA, log them, historize them, alarm them, the whole 9 yards. So that's in there. We're just going to do one. You can do plenty. You can do for any of the devices that are behind the Epic. But right now, we're just going to keep this pretty simple. Okay, now that, yeah.
So just to catch up. So two SCADAs, one secured, one not secured. Epic is the bridge between. You could set a rule on the Epic itself. You decided not to do that to control that access. So now you've set up Ignition Edge plus the Avidyne module, the Opto 22 Avidyne module, to be able to set those rules up. So now you have that bridge set up, and you have it set up with this module to give you a lot more flexibility at this point. And again, like you said, this rule enables you to log and audit and all the rest of that stuff. Is that a good summary of where we're at so far and building up this business case?
That's perfect.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. So
You're paying attention.
I'm trying.
So indeed, and then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the data that I've just created at the edge, the Allen Bradley PLC data, and any any information about the status of those port redirect rules, and I'm going to bundle them up in MQTT and send them up to the MQTT broker so that SCADA can consume those tags and do something interesting with them. How do I do that? MQTT transmission. This is the module was developed by CirrusLink Solutions, and I've got my servers that I configure in there, any transmitters, pretty quick setup. Again, outside of the scope of this, we've got lots of videos on setting it up. But what I want to do is actually enable it at this moment. So I've got my driver set up, Allen Bradley PLC tags. I've got my port redirect set up. Now I'm simply going to enable MQTT transmission and start pushing the data up to a broker. Now, hopefully, we're going to be able to kick this over now to, I think, to Kyle first, or actually, Garrick. If you wanted to connect to a PLC, what would you typically have to do, particularly in a VLAN environment? What kind of pain do you have to go through?
Yeah, there is definitely potential for pain in this. As we go down this path and we talk about like convergences of IT and OT, and we want to get to that nice place where we're all holding hands and walking in step. But the reality of the situation is that's not there. And there can be potential for great pain in that just, I might have to fill out a ticket with my IT department, and I might have to sit and wait for them to go in and give me access to this OT device, even though I'm sitting there right next to it. It can be very bad and hold up a lot of production and progress within the system. So this enables us to do this all internally within the OT, where I can just go, hey, SCADA Kyle, can you give me access to that?
But right now, do you have access to the PLC?
I do not.
Share your screen and let's see your setup.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So right now, I'm completely in the dark. I can't see it. It doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. There's no way for me to access it. And I'm sitting in the same building right down the hall from Benson, and I can't get to it.
So what we're going to do then is, now that I published all that information up to SCADA Kyle, we're going to have SCADA Kyle bring up his Ignition gateway and see if we can allow him access.
Hey, Kyle, while you're coming up, are you a skater?
Might have said that when I was younger, but now, things are a little more brittle than they used to be. So yeah. Anyway, so as you can see, we've brought up the SCADA, which would be the ignition designer. And if we come down here to the Opto 22 node, we're going to go ahead and see the Epic IL that Benson set up. We do see that it is publishing up all the tags up through that we set up for the Avidyne module. We have the tag where it's actually the enabled capabilities, and also the new one that Benson put in, the AB program LAN. And
Quick questions, Kyle.
Yes.
Did you have to enter these tags into SCADA?
I did not. It automatically populated, so that was awesome. I rescanned it just in case, but it was already there. And to your point, Garrick, I know we want to make sure that you get access. At this point, it would be making sure, hey, do you have rights? He's not trying to bypass or pull the wool over someone's ass, that type of thing. And also for tracking and auditing purposes, we can go ahead and set up some historical access, historical storage. We can go ahead and have that pushed back to the database. We can have it put on change with no minimum time between samples, so that if anyone's toggling it, we can see it right away in the historical data. We can also set up alarms. I'm going to go ahead and create one. We're going to call this one kind of give an idea of what we're actually doing, the actual LAN access being enabled.
So Ignition just treats this access like a normal tag, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're historizing it like any other tag. You're alarming like any other tag.
That is exactly right. And so I think we're good there, getting on all there, commit it, hit OK. And as we see, Ignition's indicating that we do have it being historized and we do have it on being alarmed. So I've done read-write access, and I'm going to go ahead and push out to enable that rule. And as we should see here in just a second, Garrick, if you want to reshare your screen, I believe you should have access.
It's less than a second. It's already popped up. I'm already, the X is gone. It now shows that I am coming in on the 10.192.0.144 right into that private address.
Right.
Yes, which is the Epic, right into the private address of the controller. So straight in here, we can go right online. We found the device. We're good to go.
Now, Kyle, can you turn off the access?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
So just as easily as we gave access, we can take it away. Just as fast.
And if I remember, Benson, one of the features that could be programmed is this auto revoking of access in a certain amount of time. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then the good news is that if that does occur at the edge and we shut that down, we send an MQTT message up to SCADA Kyle, so he knows that it was shut down. And all of his screens will update, all of his alarming will show that it's now an unacknowledged, but it's not an alarm anymore.
Well, thanks, Kyle. You kicked me off.
That's what I do. That's what I do. And I will go ahead and share my screen really quick to demonstrate the auditing, just so you guys can see. So if we look here, you can see the alarm that I just enabled and put in place. It's right here, that the VPN access was enabled. And we are now, just to kind of give you an idea that this is something that an interface that you could create that would be able to actually manage some of the stuff we've already done, just as a quick example. So
the alarm table that you just showed is actually, for those watching, you'll notice that alarm says Opto turbine. This is an example of what an audit or alarm table would look like. We're not trying to show that being built out here in real time for the audience's sake.
So
yeah, indeed, we have all this set up on another system that's currently my video feed right now, which is those two PLCs and so on. Yes.
All right. So if I understand SCADA, Kyle, all you had to do was subscribe to that topic coming out that Benson was publishing, the Edge guy. And once you had access to that, you could use it like any other SCADA tag to control that access. And it looks like you had audit and historization of that within a matter of 2 minutes. Did I just see that right?
You saw that, right? That's exactly what happened.
Amazing.
So that's essentially the switch that you're flipping to turn that bridge on and turn that bridge off.
Correct.
Yeah, and so the other thing about this is, Benson, if you show your screen and just go to the Epic and show that the rule is not there, but the reality is the rule is still in ignition.
Yes.
So you can have your rule sets in ignition so that when Garrett calls Kyle and say, hey, I need access, he flips the bit, the rule gets set.
Yeah, Kyle,
Whereas-
you can set the bit for me and I'll show it here in the Epic. Right now it is showing disabled. There's no rule there. So why don't you go ahead and provide access again. Now it's enabled. Now, if I want to see what the rule is, I simply refresh the screen and I'll see the rule that was invoked if I was the Epic administrator, and I can see, oh yeah, that's turned on. And as soon as he turns it off, go ahead, Kyle.
All right.
There it is. Now it's disabled. It still shows the rule, but refresh the screen, it is gone.
And
So
what
now
this-
it's all managed at ignition.
And this particular PC you just demonstrated there is enabled by this Opto 22 Avidyne module, which is using the APIs within Ignition Edge and being able to manipulate that Ignition Edge. I don't want to say remotely, that's a bad word for it, but outside of the physical access to the device itself, right?
Right. And remember that indeed, that's still the only port open on this. And I can close that port too, is the HTTPS port that I'm getting to right now. So it'd be very easy to completely close this thing off if we wanted to, but usually HTTPS access is okay. No other ports are open until that rule is invoked. Then the port is open for that temporary basis, allowing Garrett to connect to the PLC. So it does all the firewall settings. It does all the IP table. Everything that's done is all done in the background, all automatic.
Hey, Benson, we need to see how much it cost.
Oh, all right. I think I can do that.
While
Let me
you're
switch over.
doing that, so what we've just seen, I want to ask the group here, and more of a panel question. Is there any other way to achieve that through SCADA control to anybody's knowledge?
With OT hardware?
Yeah.
Not that I know of. I looked for years, and part of our problem was in our OT space, because of the complexity of the OT space and the difficulty of the different priorities from IT and OT, putting a Cisco switch in a PLC panel and trying to manage, that access, the complexity. And remember, we're doing this to our most critical equipment. And so putting something in place that will not give you access could be very detrimental. So we want to put something in place that is OT hardened, accessible by the technicians. They don't have to be reliant on a different team to give them control and access, right? They can do everything themselves.
Yeah. All right. So let's do a price review. The Opto 22, the Groove Epic, $1,980.
That's the CPU, power supply, and chassis collective cost.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question that's come in from the audience at this point, Benson. They want to know, can they talked about scale? Is there a limit to how many devices can connect to one Groove Epic?
Yeah, there's for Ignition Edge, there is a 2-device limit, and you can expand that. I think it's $100 to add more devices. There's no theoretical, or I should say there's no fixed limit to how many devices you have on the back end of the Epic, except by licensing.
So I think the question is, if I put, like, say I have a location that has a bunch of PLCs and I put one Epic there, can I get access to all of that equipment just with one Epic, or do I have to buy 10 Epics to talk to 10 PLCs?
No. You can talk to 10 PLCs with one Epic.
Is there a limit to how many PLCs I can talk to on the backside? It's just
so a difficult question to answer, but because it depends on how many tags each PLC has, a number of things come into play, but there's no fixed limit except by licensing. So if I want to talk to 10 PLCs, I Ignition Edge, license for 10 PLCs, and I can do it. If there's 100,000 tags per PLC, I think you're going to find that the Epic won't be able to keep up with that. I mean, we're talking about a quad core ARM processor with lots of RAM and so on. But Arlen has tested this. We're doing this in a number of applications today. And Arlen, I think you got up to around 15,000 tags behind an Epic, and it's was still running at about 15% CPU, something like that.
Yep. So no, for most applications like that, the Epic's going to be fine. You know, I look back and compare it to what we were doing, like on a typical booster station or a lift station, things like that. And you've got plenty of capability for that.
And another thing, the applications, some of the applications that Arlen and I are working on are actually, so you guys can see me, some of those applications are actually running full ignition on the Epic. Now you don't have a device limit. You can have as many devices as you like.
Yeah.
So just that's where it becomes an economical cost evaluation. Do I put a full ignition license on there? Or do I go with the lower cost edge license, which has its device limitations?
Mario's asking a question, Arlen, in regards to that testing of 15,000. Do you happen to recall a change rate on that?
Actually, it's interesting with Benson and I coming off of the Intellect show, we were asked about some high-speed testing. The 15,000 were once a second, but we just did some testing. I did 25 tags at 50 milliseconds.
Cool.
So yeah, it's still fast.
Yeah, 20 updates a second, 25 tags kept up. Yeah. All right, Mario says, thank you.
Yeah, and Keith, I can't seem to quite answer your question. I don't know what's the controls, but he asked, do we have to register for that MQTT meeting at ARC? No, the meeting is going to be kind of offline, but you do have to register to attend any of the other events going on at ARC. But again, it's free registration.
Yeah, yeah. We know Keith in Columbus as an end user. And so Keith, you're free, buddy. You just got to get one of those $2,000 round trip plane tickets that I'm learning about right now. Inductive Automation Edge, $800. That's the Ignition Edge IIoT version. All your drivers are included. What I was surprised to learn, Arlen, is that you guys are giving that MQTT transmission module away with that Edge license. Is that right?
Yes. Well, it's built into the package. That was always the notion of Edge, is to have the MQTT client built into it natively.
Okay. We're not covering in this price point. We should say we're just talking about the tech at the edge. If you look at that slide title, we're not talking about the cost of an ignition gateway for your central SCADA. We're not talking about distributor module or engine module, which you do need to make all of this work. We're trying to give you the audience here a sense of scale for securing your edge devices. Okay. And then last is our Avidyne, the Opto 22 API module. Status on that, Kyle, beta testing still? Is that right?
I do actually have some answers for that today. We are still in beta testing. We are finalizing some last little things, kind of working with Benson, kind of getting everything solidified. But as far as the pricing, we're going to get with Inductive, and we're going to get it on the third-party module showcase, and we're going to have it be free and post it on our website, so you can download it from our website. All of that good stuff. It'll just be, just to access it would be just like you do with any third-party module, just through the showcase on Inductive Automation.
Did we just get first release information? Did we just get breaking?
Yeah, you did actually. Yeah.
We didn't have that an hour ago, guys.
Did not have that an hour ago.
So let's all show support to Avidyne for giving away something for free. Just share this information if you would to our audience. That's awesome. If we encourage companies to do those types of things and reward them for being open and not charging us for every little thing, we have to stand behind them and reward them for that, and they'll keep doing it. So thank you, Avidyne. That's awesome. Other questions that have come in. Anybody else in the audience have a question they'd like us to answer? I think we're going to. If not, we'll probably today, I think, because we've gone very long, and as we should, this was a huge demo to try to work through. I think we'll skip the Wonder Me session that we typically would do at the end and just kind of hang out here even if we're quiet for a little bit, waiting for any more questions that might come in. Our participants, I see you all still online. So think through some questions you might want to ask the panel, and we'll just respond like we would in Wonder Me right here. And when they start to drop, I'll know that there's nothing left to ask.
One of the things to mention maybe while you're doing that is that I think it's a great thing that we have one of the inventors of one of these technologies, which lends huge flexibility, scalability to this, and that's of course Arlen. It's amazing to have him on conversations like this. So huge thanks to Arlen for that.
It's really the community. I mean, I give everybody a hard time in inductive automation because, I'm the poster child for how not to sell this technology, as I flew around the world with IBM for 15 years trying to sell $600,000 brokers. So really it was having a platform that was easy to write modules for, that we could include that technology. And so then we really started seeing the vision of what Andy and I thought would happen much earlier. And my point was, it's ironic that Facebook adopted it. Let's see, Wise, with all their Wise cameras and their smart light bulb, they all adopted it, way before the audience that it was actually invented for had started to adopt it. But now, the adoption has gone exponential. It's really cool for me to watch a technology like this evolve like it did. And to Jeff's point, if we hadn't made it open, we wouldn't be having this webinar.
Arlen, if you just told me that because of MQTT and your and Andy's work, that you've empowered the metaverse, I don't know if we're going to be friends anymore.
That's one of my most disappointing things. No, really, I mean, it is interesting. You can almost watch it on Google Trends. When the blog post came out that Facebook had done the original version of Messenger that was slow and it would eat your battery up, and they only had like 3 or 4 weeks to switch, they pretty much put MQTT on it, and that's how you send messages in Facebook.
Hey,
so there's a billion users right there. And that's one of the things that's interesting, is that if we look at a technology, TCP/IP is well proven, but MQTT has been out there in applications, in banking applications, in Facebook, and all of these other consumer applications. So the underlying technology is very, very mature, but yet we're bringing it into a new market. And the inductive community, Ignition Live or Integrate Live, are just doing a good job of exposing, why was it invented in the first place? Why do we have death certificates? Things like that. Why is it so secure? Those are all the things that we're getting out in these types of forums.
Yeah.
Hey, Benson, can you share your screen real quick? A question from Keith on when the rule gets disabled from SCADA and the internet page caches that it looks like the rule is still there. But my assumption is, and we'll test this, my assumption is once you clicked on enable, it's going to refresh, right? Let's just go ahead and try it.
Yeah, so if I go into network and look at my port redirects, when it gets enabled, that's a live link.
Yeah, go ahead and enable it.
Yeah, I just sent it over.
The only thing that doesn't happen is this web page that you're looking at right now isn't refreshing.
So go ahead and hit refresh real quick, Benson. Okay, now go ahead and disable it.
You want me to do that on my side, Alan?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is the question right here. The question is, see how it's disabled? Now, can you click save? I just want to see if it saves that rule that's there. Then go back to it.
It does.
Okay. That was the question that he had. So so Keith, the question is, or the answer is, if you have this open and leave it open, then yes, that would happen. However, if you close this down and then try to go back to it, it wouldn't have been cached.
So go ahead and disable it again. There's SCADA,
Yeah.
Kyle.
Will do.
Okay, it's disabled. If I go ahead and try to create a new session, now this is a new tab.
Right.
I'm logged in because it cached my login. If I go to network and port redirect, it's not there. It's just that it was on the page. That's something I can probably throw to developers and say, if we're updating this enabled disabled status, go ahead and refresh the page. But generally that I'm an admin, so
Yeah.
I could see that. But indeed, that's, you know.
Exactly. And like you were saying, this is purely for a demonstration purpose. You wouldn't be sitting there on that page while I'm doing it on the SCADA side. So,
Well, and if I did, I'd have to have the appropriate rights.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd have to be logged in as an admin.
Okay.
The other
That's-
question to you, Benson, is what protocols does Epic support? How about wireless comm to PC?
Absolutely. With the USB ports on the Epic, I can actually, I'm sharing the screen, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So let's just go over to this demo here. In some of these, I do have a USB Wi-Fi adapter on there. So that's, again, another network interface. So, you know, there's multiple ways of networking the Epic. VPN, Wi-Fi, and 2 gigabit Ethernet ports.
All right. There was a question about Arlen powering the metaverse. And there was a question, I thought there was also a question.
Oh, I took it off. I replied to you privately, Mario.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
think he caught the back end of a joke.
Okay.
There was a protocol question about Epic. Did I miss that while I was responding?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Is there any other protocols that and that's the beauty of Ignition, right? Well, there's a beauty of two things with the Epic. One, if it has Ignition on it, if you have Ignition, now there's a ton of protocols you can talk in DMP3, there's Modbus TCP, there's all kinds of protocols Ignition can talk. But if you don't have Ignition, you have Node-RED. And now in Node-RED, you could have all kinds of different nodes that you could install, talk Modbus TCP. There's all kinds of different things you can do. But just the Epic itself, is there native protocols that you talk?
Yeah, sure. And in this case, it depends, of course, if you're running a control engine or not. In this case, there's 2 choices, pack control or CodeSys. If I choose, both of these are not running right now because I'm not using this Epic as a controller. But if I go in and enable the CodeSys runtime, I get all of the protocols that are available through the CodeSys environment. And that's a very long list.
Yeah.
Pack control also has its set of protocols, primarily around Modbus and a few others. And then Ignition has its protocols. And then, of course, Node-RED has its own protocols. So
I would, yeah, and I'll mention here, everybody that's in the power industry, stay tuned. We're beta testing the new 61850 driver coming from Inductive Automation. That'll be added to the list. So if you've got recloser relays, any sort of intelligent electronic devices in the field, you'll be able to pick it up with the 61850.
Cool.
yeah, and here's some of the other drivers that are in there. And I don't have the driver in here for EFMs, but CirrusLink has done those as well. So if you want to connect to an EFM device, protected it, and get all the pump off cards off of that thing and send them over to MQTT, we're doing that too. So literally anything we can pull out of these devices, we're going to bundle up in MQTT messages, outbound, no firewall ports open, outbound, send it to a broker. For, in the case of a pump off card, SQL will pull that data and put it into a SQL database.
And there's other drivers that are in if you go to the third-party Inductive's third-party vendor list, just like Kyle's module, there's other drivers, SNMP, there's all kinds of other things that you can go and download those modules and get access to different pieces of equipment.
Indeed, we just had another one that just got put up to the exchange, I think on Monday. Another system integrator developed another module, an Ignition module for connecting to the RIOs via HTTP RESTful APIs. automatically pulling in all those tags from Ario and putting them in an ignition tag database. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to do different things. And I think that's really the point here, is that it's tools. You pick the right tool for the job. It's like your smartphone. You've got a lot of different apps on there, but the apps that I have on my phone may be very different than the apps on your phone because we're doing different things. And that's what we try to do with the Epic, is provide a platform that you choose the right software based on what you need to get done, and choose the best way. There's lots of different ways to do it. And that's why somebody like Garrick is, if you go to the opto22.com website, there's a little chat button down on the lower right. You click on that chat button and ask a question. It's Garrick and several other engineers here ready to answer those questions for you in real time.
One of those questions that might come through on the Opto page after this, but we'll just hit it here, and we'll take this as our last question. Keith, you did monopolize the question. So buddy, you owe us at least some promotion for the next event. I'm just giving you a hard time, man. If you guys don't know Keith Lighting here in the audience, I recommend you reach out to him on LinkedIn. Really awesome guy, up and coming, doing some cool stuff. So he wants to know, looking at AB PLC alternatives, curious if it can control an Allen Bradley servo drive.
Garrick's the PLC guru. Garrick, let her rip.
Potentially, yes. We don't have a lot of work with the servo side of the Allen Bradley. We do using code assist and PowerFlex drives, controlling them, and you just drop in the EDS file and you can run with it from there. So I'm guessing, I'm not, like I said, not a big servo guy, but I'm guessing you could do that as well using the code assist runtime engine and the Ethernet IP scanner module.
Garrick, can I connect you with Keith offline and you guys can continue the conversation?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, let's talk about what's coming up. Next Wednesday is the rundown. So remember, the rundown is the follow-up conversation. It looks like with just a few more people following us, we'll be broadcasting that live on our LinkedIn page. I'm sure I can get the extra couple registrations so we can do that. Thank you, everybody that's helped us with that following. Benson, are you available Monday morning for an early morning coffee chat with Alan and I?
This coming Monday?
This coming Monday. How early you
know,
wake up?
after getting ready for this thing, I'm taking a few days off.
You deserve it.
So put in your orders for any Napa wines you'd like, and I'll bring them back.
A little yardstick for me, please. Every Monday morning, Alan and I have committed to just getting together, going live on LinkedIn and YouTube, just having conversation. That's where we saw Water for Good, Jim Goodnight. He's not with Water for Good. Jim Hawking a couple weeks ago. I'd love to have Jim Goodnight. By some crazy weird chance, Mr. Goodnight, if this gets to you, please join us for a coffee chat. We'd love to have some other voices on there. So maybe Kevin or David, we can get you guys Monday morning and hear some more about your stories. All right, panelists. I don't think it is just me. I think Alan, you'll join me in this. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You took on a lot today, and you did very well.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, well, let's sign off. Everybody, thank you for being here. This will be posted as soon as I can convert it on our Integrate Live business page on LinkedIn. So thank you. And everybody, thank you so much. We appreciate your support.
Have a good
Thank you,
day.
Take care, everyone.
Great working with you guys.
Thanks.